Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Venuti, president of the Barrington Preservation Society. I'm standing here this morning on this beautiful May day in front of the General Thomas Allin House on Lincoln Avenue here in Barrington. I'm here today to introduce this third in a series of videos that the Preservation Society is doing along with folks from the Town Manager's Office and the Barrington Public School System. In this video, we're going to meet Dr. Nathaniel Taylor, who, along with his family, is lucky enough to live in this uniquely well-preserved historic house. He's going to talk to you not only about this house, but some very interesting facts about history here in Barrington. So let's go meet Dr. Taylor now.
Good morning, and thank you, Stephen. I've lived in Barrington and in the General Thomas Allin House for 9 years. For most of these 9 years, I've been glad to learn and share information about Barrington's history and oldest houses as a Preservation Society volunteer. I spend my time interpreting Barrington's town museum and running our historic plaquing program. This center chimney colonial house is one of very few houses in Barrington that survived from before the Revolutionary War. The house was built for Thomas Allin, his wife Amy Bicknell Allin, their 12 children, and 5 African-American slaves. The Allin family were wealthy farmers in a farming town, but Thomas Allin also led the town's militia as an officer during the Revolutionary War, and he became a general after Rhode Island had become a state in the new United States. Thomas Allin also served as a town official and as a representative in Rhode Island state government. In 1774, there were 600 people in Barrington. Barrington was mostly farmland, and those 600 people in about 90 households were outnumbered by over 1,000 sheep and cows. I'd like to share some pictures inside this house and from Barrington's history. Before getting into the Allin House, I'm going to share some maps that show us the history of Barrington, especially in colonial times. I made some of these maps for the museum a few years ago that show how this town grew and changed. 400 years ago, in 1620, this town was the heartland of the Wampanoag native people. But when the first Europeans came on the Mayflower, this area became part of the Plymouth colony. The land was disputed for generations between the Plymouth and Rhode Island colonies, and also between the European settlers and the Wampanoag people. The town of Rehoboth was established in 1641. At that time, the area south of it, including where we live now, was recognized by the Europeans as Wampanoag land. But some of that land in Barrington was purchased in 1645, the Wannamoisett Purchase, including the Bay Spring neighborhood in West Barrington, and in 1653, the Soames Purchase, the rest of modern Barrington, and more. Then, in 1667, this land was all incorporated as the town of Swansea in Plymouth Colony. In 1717, after King Philip's War, part of Swansea split off to become the town of Barrington in the Massachusetts colony. Rhode Island still disputed it, though, and in 1747, the colony boundary was redrawn, with most of Barrington and part of Swansea renamed as the town of Warren. Finally, in 1770, the town of Barrington was reestablished in its current form in the state of Rhode Island, but the American Revolution was right around the corner. To look at Barrington's colonial houses, let's start with a map from 1895. Right in the middle of this map is the brickyard, before it ran out of clay for bricks and was flooded into Brickyard Pond in the 1940s. The middle school is right here, the blue square on the map. And here, scattered across town, are all the surviving houses from the 1700s. They're scattered all about, but there's a group clustered in what we call Barrington Village, right around the intersection of the White Church and the high school playing fields. 2 of these houses, marked with the black X's, were torn down just in the last 7 years. The houses built before the Revolution are even fewer. There are only 9 of them, but the dates aren't certain for many of those. The one circled here is the General Thomas Allin house. This red line marks the boundaries of the Allin family farm, which was divided in 1768 between 2 brothers, Matthew and Thomas Allin. Matthew's house is no longer standing. At the museum is this copy of a map drawn by Thomas Allin himself, the year he and his brother divided the farm. This was 1 year before the town of Barrington was incorporated in Rhode Island. Thomas Allin surveyed each line along the boundaries of the property, including the shores of the bay, from Haynes Park down to Muskechuck Creek by the golf course. General Thomas Allin was born in 1742 and died in 1800. He was a leading man in Barrington in his lifetime, the 4th generation of a substantial farming family, an officer in the American Revolutionary Militia, and subsequently an officer in the state militia system in Rhode Island, where he held the rank of brigadier general in the 1790s. He was a long-time member of the town government, serving Barrington in a number of offices, including town tax assessor and treasurer. He also represented Barrington in the Rhode Island General Assembly during our state's ratification of the Constitution, and according to Barrington historian Thomas Bicknell, it was Barrington's 2 representatives to that assembly who cast the deciding votes for Rhode Island to accept the Constitution that formed our new nation. Most colonial houses in Barrington looked like this, a rectangular wood frame house around a center chimney. These photographs show variations on the same basic shape. These are some of Barrington's own surviving houses from this time. One of these houses, this is the Allin West House, is listed on the National Register because it's an unusual shape. It's called a square plan house, that is, it's square and not rectangular. It has a distinctive triangular chimney in the back parlor. The General Thomas Allin house on Lincoln Ave is more typical. It's a rectangle. And here it is. It was already old when this picture was published in the History of Barrington in 1898. The Thomas Allin house is a timber frame house with 12 oak posts about 7 inches square, defining 3 bays laterally and 2 bays deep. It's a classic rectangular Georgian house. The structural frame is oak beams arranged in this grid of 16-foot squares. Here are some of those beams. This is the northwest corner of the house, taken from the inside, showing the beams tenoned into one of the corner posts above the first floor. It's a modern flexible heating line that goes right up through that oak beam on the left. And this is another in-progress photograph showing the original west wall of the house from inside the 19th century addition in the foreground. This shows that the exterior wall is actually pretty thin, hand-cut wooden clapboards over the hand-planed or pit-sawn oak planks. These oak planks frame all the walls of the house, running from the foundation to the roof. Interior walls were made the same way as exterior walls. Here is a cross-section photograph of a piece we took out of one interior wall, and that shows the oak plank core of the wall, and then the hand-split lathes with the original plaster coating on the outside of the wall. Now we're in the kitchen. Colonial houses in this area usually had a big center chimney fireplace system for cooking food and heating the whole house. Bread could be baked in 2 ovens in this fireplace, one at the back and one at the side behind this door. That was a newer one. A stone for sharpening knives is set into the fireplace here with the initials TA for Thomas Allin and the date 1783, probably when the fireplace was renovated to add that second oven. The fanciest parts of the house were the front rooms and stairs with the fine woodwork, like this stair railing here, and the paneled fireplaces in the front rooms. Some rooms have older woodwork than others. Most houses this old have been renovated at many different times, so things don't match from room to room. The oldest woodwork in the house is probably this fireplace surround in the southeast parlor, of a style that likely dates to about 1769, when we think this house was first built. The finest woodwork in the house is this full-height Federal fireplace surround in the bedroom of the General's widow, Amy Bicknell Allin. She was deeded this room and lived here for over 25 years after the General died in 1800. And here's the same fireplace during our renovations 9 years ago. A newer wall had cut this room in half, separating part of the fireplace surround and burying it behind a modern closet. We were able to expand the room back to its original dimension and restore that edge of the fireplace surround. In 1800, when General Allin died, his property was divided into 17 different parcels, and the house itself was divided in half and inherited by different branches of the family. This wall, probably built in 1802, still has a door with a lock in it that separated the two halves of the house that passed as different properties among descendants down until 1924, when the house was reunited. The attic is remarkable because it preserves scrap paper from General Allin's family, recycled and used to paste over cracks in the walls to keep out drafts. This includes the General's geometry homework from when he was a boy, farm accounts from the 1740s, and even state and town tax records from the 1798 property tax assessments. The west end of the attic has a set of planks laid over the collar tie beams to form a sort of loft, which may have been additional storage space or sleeping space for children, servants, or the African American slaves documented as part of the Allin family household in the 1770s. The documents pasted to the attic walls are a unique window into the history of the house and the family that built it. Some of the documents are clearly older than the house, like this one from the 1740s that probably belonged to Thomas Allin's father, Matthew Allin. And there's a close-up. Other documents dated from the 1750s, including several which give specific accounts of the farm produce raised and the buying and selling of farm goods. Other documents show drawings which appear to be geometric calculations, either for surveying or for navigation. This one in particular is how to calculate the area of a particular parcel of land. And this is something that a trained surveyor does, and that's exactly one of the things that we know Thomas Allin did. A particularly interesting thing was this clipping from a newspaper that's simply lying on the floor of the attic loft. It is a poem, anonymous, and there's nothing on this scrap to say when the newspaper was issued, that it was printed on. The back has some advertisements for some businesses in Providence. Using the names in those ads, I was able to find the specific issue of the newspaper that this came from. And here it is, a little bit more of those 2 pages. One of the most amazing pieces pasted to the wall is this sheet from the 1798 property tax assessment, which is a kind of a ledger listing of property, including the first line of handwritten on this is a listing for Thomas Allin's own farm, which described the location and the acreage, the number of buildings on it, and the rough valuation of about $1,000. It's quite rare to find the signature of the builder of the house from the 1700s pasted to the wall in the attic, but this page has Thomas Allin's own signature. Thomas and Amy Allin's descendants lived in the house for over 150 years, down to 1924. Many of them are buried here in the Allin family burying ground on Bay Spring, formerly part of the Allin farm, and one of 3 Barrington cemeteries that are older than Princess Hill Cemetery by the town hall. This cemetery has members of the Allin, Drown, and Vile families, all related, and all living in this part of town for generations. The oldest gravestone here is that of Thomas Allin's grandfather, also Thomas, from 1719. General Allin's gravestone is here, and next to it, his wife, Amy Allin's. Her gravestone had been broken off and buried for years. 2 years ago, it was dug up, repaired, cleaned, and reset, and that's why it's so much brighter than her husband's. What looks like an empty part of the cemetery is where many of Barrington's African-American families from this part of town may have been buried, but only one of them, Scipio Freeman, a veteran of the Revolutionary War and formerly enslaved in Matthew Allin's household, was buried here with a beautiful matching head and footstone in the traditional style. Only he, among probably many family members, has a gravestone in this part of the cemetery. Barrington's oldest houses and historic cemeteries have a lot to tell us about the history of our community, but there's much more to learn at the Town Museum or through the programs of the Barrington Preservation Society.